I'm John Underhill, and this is the Red Special Guitar Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today on the Red Special Guitar Podcast, we have a friend of mine from longer than I probably care to remember. He started off by trying to sell me a gold G string, and he now has a guitar shop in Wales that is arguably the most reputable guitar shop in Wales and supplies Brian May with all of his equipment and strings, most importantly. Andrew Morgan, hello, how are you?
How are you doing, John?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Are you well? And I can see you. Your hair is doing very well.
It's month 13 and it's thicker and more it's thicker and more uncontrollable than ever. It's getting in my eyes. We're currently moving the shop around quite a bit because we got the opportunity to. We're in lockdown and there's perfect opportunity to do the things that you don't generally get to do. So I'm kind of on my knees unwiring things and screwing things up, and it's just getting in my eyes, and it's absolutely it's doing my nutting. It's hot. It's like wearing two hats to bed. It's
nice. Keeps you warm then in those cold winter Welsh nights.
Yeah, and it has been cold as well. But I'm going to get it cut as soon as I get the opportunity to. And if I don't get it cut, I think Kate's going to cut it off in the middle of the night. So it's, yeah. I think it's my hair she's talking about anyway. So.
Yeah. I'm sure it probably was. So Andy, we go back a long way, as I mentioned.
We do.
You and I probably bumped into each other on the old Brian Maywold forum, I'd have thought. And
yeah, the old black and red one. Run by, do you know, who was it? Is it Gonzalo or something?
It might have been, yeah. I forget now. That's bad, isn't it?
Yeah. There are a couple of, it's strange, isn't it? You know, through kind of Red Special land, you know, through the ages, you know, you've got some kind of names that have been prominent in different kind of eras, haven't you? And there's I think it's Gonzalo Plaza. Is that
rings a bell
with you? Yeah. I remember back in 1997 or 1998 when I first had Virgin dial-up internet and just, you know, searching on whatever it was, Ask Jeeves or whatever, and, you know, Red Special or Brian May, whatever. And his name coming up quite a bit. And he had like a website that was just loads of information on Guild guitars, which, and I think he had that Brian May World website. I'm not sure, but it changed hands a few times. And then we kind of, as you said, you know, we kind of got in touch via that, I think. And you, myself, and Greg Coxill all became self-employed on the first day of January 2006.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big moment, all egged on by each other. And from memory, MSN was a big thing, and we used to spend up until 1, 2 a.m. every night.
Yeah.
3 of us chatting on MSN.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, you know, it was almost like holding hands and jumping off the cliff at the same time, wasn't it? The Thelma and Louise and +1 or whatever. And yeah, you know, it's a scary thing for anybody to go through, but, you know, it was nice, even though we were doing quite separate and different things. You know, I was concentrating on the retail and, you know, I was trying to distribute these, you know, the bits that I was doing. Greg was manufacturing, you know, he was making the electrolead products, and you were out there on the front line kind of doing the trade, weren't you? You know, and
wiring houses badly.
Yeah. We won't go into the reasons why you're not doing it anymore. Like,
yeah, or why you had to move house out of the last place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it burnt down.
But there was something quite comforting about the three of us going through the same BS at the same time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's equally exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Definitely. And it is, I mean, it feels like only yesterday when you say it like that, but when you think back, it feels like a very long time ago as well. Different era.
15 years ago, it's a big chunk of anybody's life, but being as young as us as well.
It's a good job we all started when we were 16. And
Exactly. No, I wish, but no, it's yeah, lots of things happen, don't they?
yeah. Well, I've never actually asked you, which is really bad of me considering we've been good friends for such a long time, but can you remember the first time you heard Queen music, Brian May music, and you kind of realised that you fell in love, and then you started? What was your journey to finding the guitar out? And
Yeah, well, so there's always been music on in the house, whether I was staying at my grandmother's house or whether I was staying or whether, just at my growing up in the family home, there was always the radio on. And, back then, Radio One, I've got absolute distinct memories of, Radio One, when I was 2 or 3, around about, 1982, 1983, you'd have Simon Bates doing the kind of love story in the morning with that, that music going on. And, Janice is about to kill herself because, Terry doesn't love her anymore and all this kind of thing. And just remember that music going on. But, Radio One back in the early 80s was a brilliant radio station. And, you used to have, I've got a deep love of 80s music, and it all comes from my childhood. So things like, Tears of Fears and Thompson Twins and, all the good stuff from the early to mid 80s, just kind of ingrained. And I've got distinct memories of, being 4 years old and sitting on my mum's lap doing the Radio Gaga claps, and that, so, Queen weren't necessarily identified as a band that I absolutely liked. My first record was Kim Wilde. I can't remember.
Is that where you get the inspiration for the hair from?
For the hair, yeah, absolutely. So I think You Keep Me Hanging On, Kim Wilde was the first record that my mum ever got me, kind of thing. And there'd be certain songs I'd absolutely fall in love with, but there's distinct kind of periods of my childhood where I remember Queen music being played and played distinct part. My parents had a few Queen albums between them. My dad had Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack, which Queen 2 was his absolute favourite album and of Queen's. But he only had those 2 albums. He wasn't really interested in the later stuff, really. And my mum had liked the opera. And, they both said they, really loved Queen, but they didn't own any of the greatest hits albums or anything like that. And the same as a lot of people around about my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, when Freddie died, there was just an explosion of interest of Queen. And I had a cousin who was really massively into Queen, and he was in the fan club, and he went to Magic Tour concert, and I think the Works concert as well. And he was in the Friends Will Be Friends video and all that kind of thing in the crowd. So he was a mega fan. He had all these picture discs, and whenever we went round to his house, he used to look at those. But I seriously got into Queen, I reckon, probably about, I'd say probably before Freddie died, but kind of obsessively. I use obsessively, not quite as serious as it might kind of come across, but I really did, start loving Queen and delving into the back catalogue and everything once Freddie kind of died, which is a shame in many in many cases, that you're only discovering these things after such a massive character is gone. But at the same time, I was only 11, and I was never likely to go to a concert before then. So yeah, they've always been part of the the soundtrack kind of growing up and everything. But it's from when Freddie died is when I started taking a real interest in it, and it's when I decided to start playing guitar.
Yeah. So coming on to that, was it Queen music, or was it other just general music that inspired you to pick up the guitar? Was it a combination of events
it was Queen music, and there was always a guitar hanging about I think my dad was given a guitar at some point, and he didn't know how to tune it. He used to play, I remember being in the bathroom when I was really young, and him asking him to play Postman Pat on the guitar, and basically you'd play Smoke in the Water on one string, on the E string, but make it sound like Postman Pat. So it'd be Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. And and I thought,
that.
yeah, I know. What a mashup. And I thought you could play guitar off the back of that. But then, when I took this guitar along to a guitar teacher that my parents put me in for a lesson in our local town, and I went there for a half-hour guitar lesson, and he told me, I remember him looking at me and saying, all of these strings are tuned to the same note. And yeah, what? And so he tuned it up properly for me, and that's as much as we did with the guitar that day. He just wrote a few things down on paper, and he showed me how the keys on the keyboard relate to the notes on the guitar. And you just think, we haven't picked up a guitar, this is boring. So I didn't bother going back, and I put the guitar down for about 6 months. And then I went into Cardiff one Saturday, bought a book of Queen songs, and started a crazy little thing called Love, and just started working my way kind of through there. And that's how I kind of started. I taught myself, and it was via that kind of that songbook.
Yeah, similar story. It's quite interesting how similar your story is to lots of other people that I've spoken to, and will speak to on my own story.
Yeah, and listening to the previous episodes that you've put up, it's the eye-opening thing is that there's a John Underhill and an Andrew Morgan and a Gerben and a Jonathan in every town of certainly Europe. I think like Queen has such a massive reach, and they seem to have grabbed the attention of all of us in exactly the same way. And
yeah,
we're all individual, but we all seem to be following this very, very oddly coincidental kind of journey, don't we?
We do. It's quite nice. It's lovely. I mean, that's I think why we all get on so well when we meet up and have a chat, and why the meetups work so well, because they're based around who's going there and around the people sharing their stories. And I think that's definitely comes across when you actually sit down and meet, like, talk to us. And
yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of touching on what I said a little bit earlier. There seems to be characters that have come and gone from all different parts of the world, and I think the first meetup that we went to, the first one I went to, was 2007. I think it was in Aylesbury, was it? It was at Matt Wickham.
Matt Wickham. It's around.
The three of us shared a hotel room.
Yeah. No, you need to clarify who the three of us are.
Yeah, sorry. Roxy from the bar, wasn't it? No, it was it was the Three Musketeers. It was Greg Coxill, yourself, and me. And calling the age rank, I got the single bed, and
you did.
You two.
I think one of us slept.
I don't.
One of us was on the floor, and the other one of us was on the pull-out sofa.
That's not my business, mate. All I know.
It's funny that whole day was pretty surreal, because you'd brought along. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but you'd brought along the Pete Cornish pedalboard system, the whole giant floorboard and the rack mount. And my dream, I'd been poring over images of this stupid pedalboard and listening to different different live versions with it on, and watching the One Vision video where he's using it, and speaking to Pete Cornish. And you'd brought it along water damaged, and that night, because it didn't,
it was already damaged, just as a disclaimer.
But that night you're like, I don't know where to put it, and so part of that system spent the night in my car.
Yeah. We I think the logic was, let's. The thing is, they were early days for us as well, and that was the first time that I'd been entrusted with something. Honestly, I don't know if we're kind of jumping ahead, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But it was the first time that I'd been entrusted with something from Pete and Brian, and just there is a what a nerve-wracking thing to,
Yeah.
I was felt very, very privileged, and you can't help but think a little bit of yourself, knowing that you've been entrusted with such a massive part of history.
Definitely.
Um, the strange thing is that 15 years or 13 years on, whatever it is now, especially after things like the the movies come out and all the rest of it, you do wonder whether things like that have a much tighter security kind of aspect of it. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. No, it's
Yeah.
everything does seem to have rocketed in just going off a little bit. There was a flight case that David Gilmour sold. When he sold all his guitars going back, but 3 years ago, the the number one Strat and the black Strat and all the rest of it. One of the Pink Floyd flight cases, which looks like just a bog standard flight case, it went for like 45 grand. And Pete and Brian have given us the old guitar kind of flight case that used to hold all the backup guitars, like the birch and the the 12 strings and all the rest of it from the Queen days. You can see this flight case on the News of the World documentary. And he said, we don't use it for touring much anymore. You're welcome to have it in the shop. And I got this thing in. So I'm sure that I think that they give it to me literally about 2 weeks after the Gilmour sale, and I'm sure that if they'd known about that, they wouldn't have. It wouldn't be sat in my shop at the moment. But
No.
There's this last 5 years or so, it seems that there's been a real appreciation of all this gear that has got real historical value.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember at the time that pedal board coming in and that rack unit, and that thing played, on all of the most
stage
iconic.
At Live Aid. Yeah,
it was on the stage at Live Aid. It was on the stage at Wembley '86. So that whole Magic tour, it was used for. It's used to record One Vision. It's Brian. I know it's daft, but Brian's played through it and stood on it, and it's created all those wonderful tracks. And there it is, one in your car, and then two spending the night in my car.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's and the strange thing is that you can't do anything with it.
No, it doesn't.
So the story behind that was that, from what I gathered, after the Magic tour, and like I say, this is a story that I've been told, and whether it's 100% true or not, I don't know. But everything got put into storage. I think they owned a lockup or a hangar somewhere with all the old Queen gear and lights and all the rest of it. And the roof had a leak, and unfortunately, I think the Cross were using quite a lot of gear as well out of this hangar, this warehouse, and so things got moved, maybe didn't get put back, and all the rest of it. And this pedal board suffered water damage because of a leaky roof, and it kind of breaks your heart when you think about it. But I know that Nigel's he did look at it a year or two ago. I don't know if that was with an eye to restoring it or what, but it's a shame for it not to at least be attempted to be restored, isn't it?
Yeah. It's one of those things where you look at it and go, it probably needs to go in a museum somewhere. And this is the pedal board from Live Aid, and something should be done with it for sure, because it is such an iconic thing. In our community, especially, the amount of times I watched that gig and watched, like, trying to figure out what lights were on it, and which bits he was using, had he had anything else plugged into it at the time, and all that really geeky, boring stuff that makes you no better at playing guitar, but you feel better about yourself because you've noticed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the interesting thing is that because there was like I struggled to remember, and I did take some pictures, but I think some people took better pictures, but there was like this box that it went to, wasn't it? There was
big routing unit, like a
that's right, which kind of went out to the different amps then, wasn't it? And
so there's this big giant, like, table-sized pedal board with a multi-core cable plugged into this box that was sat behind him, that was where all the amps were plugged into, and it's pretty cool. And Pete Cornish built that thing. Nowadays, those things are worth an absolute fortune. And
I was going to say, given that he charges 400 quid or whatever it is for a booster, can you imagine how much that would cost?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, right. So we've jumped ahead a bit, but going back,
Sure.
young Andy Morgan has picked up the guitar and he's now decided that he wants to own a Red Special. How do you go about finding out about what's available, and what's that story like?
Yeah, so I started playing on the acoustic, and then found out that my dad had a Hofner up the attic of his dad's house, and we went around my granddad's and dug this from the attic, and it was a great guitar, this Hofner. It was thinner than an acoustic, much thinner. It was actually called a very thin. So it was a very thin guitar, and if you turned it to its side, so you could only see the side. You did a certain pose in the mirror or the window. It looked a little bit like a Red Special, but it wasn't a Red Special. So, and this thing, it was, the scratch plate was held in place with some kind of really. It was a rusty nail kind of sticking out the side of it, and it's meant to kind of be pinned into the bridge or something, and this come loose. And the amount of, I should have had a tetanus, but the amount of times I drew blood because of this guitar was unreal. But I was playing it, and it was a hollow body, and it was much easier to play than the acoustic because it had a really nice action on it and everything, but it wasn't a solid body electric guitar. And looking at the inner album cover of Greatest Hits 2, you see, all these shots of Brian live with this red guitar. And I think it was for my 13th birthday or something. My dad said, right, have you thought about maybe getting a proper electric guitar for Christmas? And my birthday is quite close to Christmas as well. So I said, oh, I'd love that. Yeah. And he said, what do you want? And obviously within reason, and I said, oh, I don't know what Brian May plays. And so we went into Cardiff, and there's a fantastic shop there called Cranes, which is gone now, and went in there and asked one of the guys there, said, what does Brian May use? He says, he uses a Red Special. And I said, right, how do we get one of those? He said, well, he made it, you can't get one. And I think coincidentally, a guitar magazine was doing a feature on Brian with Nuno Betancourt, I think, and it showed a lot of pictures of this guitar, and he talked about it in there, and so I started learning a bit about the guitar that way, and just realized that there's no way you could get hold of one of these. So I had my first proper guitar of my own was a Hohner, because Hohner had a manufacturing plant in Caerphilly, which is just up the road from where I live, and Dad knew some of the people who worked there, and they put together this really lovely 59 copy Les Paul. And I'm going to cut a minute. I'm going to get the pop shield because I'm popping a lot. I can hear in my thing. Right, so give me a second. Give me a second.
This is going to look great on YouTube. I should have said at the beginning as well, if we mess up, we'll just go back, and it makes no difference because I can just cut it out.
Cool. Okay. There you are. So, that's better. So, where did we got to?
Hohner, your dad knew someone at Hohner, and they built you a lovely 59 Les Paul copy.
That's right. So, it was a great guitar. It's a heavy chunk of a guitar, as Les Pauls are, and it gives you that rock sound, the nice kind of, and I was into Led Zeppelin and Clapton and all that kind of thing. So, it really did suit my needs, and I really love this guitar. But again, you'd catch your reflection in the window when you're playing at night up in your bedroom, and just dreaming that it's a Red Special. And I then bought Guitarist magazine when they reviewed the Guild 93, and just was dribbling over it. Any guitar magazine that came out that had this Guild 93 on it, I had to buy the magazine because it was just the most gorgeous guitar ever. Then went to my first ever gig, Brian May, in the ice rink in Cardiff, and he had obviously his guitar. I was at the front row, didn't stop jumping for the entire gig. Even during Love of My Life, I think I still kind of jumping. I must have gone the tits of everybody around me. But he had that lovely kind of Guild 93 prototype there, and knowing that his guitar was a one-off, you set your, that's never going to happen. But that Guild is just the much nuts. It is to die for. All the photography on it looked absolutely beautiful. And then you read the reviews, and then you get to the end bit, and it was 1795, I think it was, or 1895 with a hard case, and you just think, I'm 13, I'm 14 years old. There's no way you're going to get one of those. And my parents kind of, I very privileged, growing up. That whatever they could do for me, they would. They worked hard, and they loved the fact that I played an instrument. My grandparents loved the fact that I played an instrument, and it was I was never into sports. Music was my thing. I'd have more pleasure staying in my room playing guitar for an entire evening than I would going out playing football or anything like that with my friends. So, knowing that these guitars were limited to X amount of pieces as well, it just wasn't going to happen. And, you just kind of forget about it. And for my 16th birthday, I saved up half, and my parents provided me, and my parents paid half, and I had a Fender Stratocaster for my 16th birthday. And, you start setting your sights elsewhere, the Guilds had all sold out by 1996. I was never going to, or 1995, I was never going to get one. I wouldn't be able to afford one either. And there's no way that I'd ever ask my parents for something that would be, that'd be that expensive. I wouldn't, even at that age, I wouldn't want to put the pressure on them, because, it's not fair, is it? It's such a massive amount of money. And then 1996, I was doing my GCSEs and, going through all that. And my grandmother, she had secondary cancer. She had cancer a few years before, but it came back again. And, we were told that it was, it's going to be, limited amount of time that, we had with her, kind of thing. And she, it was towards the end of June, and for some reason, my dad and my brother went camping or something, which they never do, which was strange. So they went off, and my mum went to stay, even though, they only lived like 3-4 miles away from us. My mum went up there to stay, their house to stay for the weekend with her parents. And I said, I'll come up and stay as well, which was a really strange thing. So it ended up being, me and my mum slept on the floor, and, we stayed over my nan's house this night in June. And the day after the Sunday, my brother and my dad got back from this camping thing that they did. And for some, I can't remember what it is. I think my mum said, I'm gonna wash your curtains, Mum. And she said, Andrew, will you pull the settee away from the curtains? And I think I was playing on a Game Boy or something like that at the time. It's 1996, kids, all right? Yeah. And I said, yeah, in a minute. And she goes, do it now, please. And I said, okay. So I put it down, and I pull this settee away from the window, and there's a brown leather looking kind of case, and I see the gold Guild emblem on the side. And as I'm talking about this now, the hairs are kind of going up on the back of my neck, and I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what, in my wildest dreams, I knew what was inside that case, but yeah, it's almost like I couldn't admit to myself that this might actually be happening, because I dreamt about, I've dreamt about this guitar, literally, nightly for however long. And I look around, and my granddad, my nan, my mum, my dad, my brother are there, and they obviously all know what's going on. They're just waiting for my reaction. And so I pull out this case, and I said, I can't open it. And they said, open it, and opened it up. And there it was, which, it's over there in the rack. This cherry red, beautiful kind of, words, and superlatives just mean nothing compared to what I felt about opening this thing. I couldn't talk. I couldn't speak. And, I look around, and my nan says, you've worked hard and you're a good boy, and I want you to have this. And, oh man, people people start crying and all the rest of it. And, I just picked this thing up, and I played my first A chord on it, and I just couldn't get over it. And, there's this manual inside there where there's like a forward from Brian, and, there's settings showing what settings get what guitars, kind of thing. And basically, I took this thing home, and I just, I can still feel the feeling in my chest. There was just nothing could describe the elation that I had, with regards to having this. And it turns out the reason my nan had got it for me as a, for doing my GCSEs, but she knew that she wasn't going to last that long. And she went at the end of July, and I had my results kind of mid-August. But, how glad I am that, I had this while she was there. And, the story of this guitar goes that obviously it was used, with it being 1996, but my parents found one in an advert for one in the back of a guitar magazine. They traveled down to the West Country to pick it up, and it belonged to a guy. He'd recently got married, and they're expecting a kid, and the wife couldn't accept the fact that there was an £1,800 guitar, sat there, and the guy kind of really didn't want to let go of it. But the funny thing, just on the day that I received the guitar, it turned out that they bought the treble booster as well. So they had the Guild kind of grey box treble booster, and that had been misplaced over my nan's house. So there was like an Easter egg hunt for about a half hour afterwards trying to find the booster. But yeah, this guitar means, you try not to be materialistic in life, because, especially after the year that we've had, what means more than anything is, the health of your loved ones and happiness, which is in short supply on years like this. It's quite difficult. But, I always say, I say jokingly, but, there's probably an element of seriousness about it as well, is that in a burning building, I'd grab the Guild in one hand, the Guyton in the other, then I'd go and grab one or two more, and then I'd go in and grab Kate and the cat, and then then we call the emergency services and see what else can be salvaged. This guitar, there's no way on God's earth that I will part with this thing unless something really, really drastically kind of bad happens. And even then I'd fight tooth and nail to keep hold of this thing. It's not the closest replica out there, and but that doesn't matter. The value this has to me is far beyond anything that any other
definitely coming across, mate.
Yeah, I know. Let's have a drink.
No, not at all. Yeah, I was just. This is the great thing though about the community and the guitar, because for you the story is around discovering Queen and music, and then going on, and your family realizing how much this means to you, and your own family doing something to go out of their way to provide you with what they could do to get you the thing that you wanted. And
that's absolutely, yeah.
That echoes Brian's own story with his own family. Couldn't afford a guitar. Mum and Dad said no, but Dad says, why don't we build one instead, son? And we'll build it better than any other guitar there has ever been. And all of us have got these little stories that sort of,
Absolutely, and they all mean the world to all of us,
yeah,
and so with what you're doing with this, I think you mentioned before, it's like a little kind of time capsule, and how interested people will be in this in a couple of generations time or not. They might not give two hoots about it, but it's we've all got our little anecdotes and our little stories about this, and it means so much to all of us, and there's nothing wrong with it meaning a lot to all of us. It's why should we hide? That's something great that's happened in the last like 10 years or so, has been the rise of the geek, hasn't it?
yep,
There's
definitely.
going back, I didn't show you the rest of my room because
Well, the
it's
Transformers collection, you mean?
you can see in the background. Bollocks. Yeah.
I
That's
know, we've discussed that as well. You forget
yeah,
I've been to your house, and back in the
yeah.
the early days, we've
Yeah, I know.
hung out a
No,
bit as well.
I know that's the thing, and so it's the great thing is that when I was certainly in my teens, to be over enthusiastic about anything, was to be, it was quite sad, in the eyes of others, and I worried too much about what other people thought about me and all the rest. And there's this great, let's say, this last 10 years or so where people have embraced their passion. You look at the people that Queen surround themselves with at the moment, with regards to the people who make their documentaries and all
Yeah,
this kind of thing. These are hardcore Queen fans. People who went to conventions. I went to conventions. I got horrendous stories about conventions that I don't know is suitable for a PG rated podcast. But there's people who are better placed to do what is best for a legacy and a brand than people who absolutely love it. And I think that is one of the strengths of Queen, is that people are so passionate about them and they care so much about all of their output and what they do, that that I think it pushes Queen to make good decisions with regards to what they do.
yep,
Especially latterly, I think, and it's they care about the day-to-day interest, but it's almost like the legions of fans around the world are caring about what Queen are for the next 40, 50 years. It's
yeah. No,
yeah.
it's a good place to be. It really is. And it's things like this. The podcast wouldn't have been able to existed 10 years ago because no one would have listened to it for a start, and I probably would have been too afraid to make it, worrying, like you said, about what my friends and family and would think about me. But it's like definitely a movement to, so I think, like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, having a speciality and being interested in something and being that passionate about it it's become acceptable because everyone realised that they've all got their own stuff that we all geek out about, and there's now communities, and the internet has brought us all together, so you can go and hang out with your online friends that like Transformers, and that's okay because everyone understands it. Or you can go and hang out with your Red Special mates, and that's
Yeah,
fine because everyone understands and gets why the Red Special is so important. And
absolutely. And I think there's been an acceptance that if you're not if you're not imposing your passions on somebody who isn't bothered about it, well, what harm are they doing? So it's
definitely,
yeah, no, it's I think it's a really sweet thing, and providing it doesn't get too kind of fanatical, there's nothing wrong with having a passion.
not at all. So kids, if you're listening, jump onto the old Red Special forum on Facebook or the old Red Special forum and join
Does it
up.
still exist? Does it still
Yeah,
exist?
the
Brian May
forum
World?
does. The
Yeah,
Brian
no,
May World does.
yeah, I know the forum does.
Yeah, Brian May World does, and all the old
Yeah.
articles on there, are like Greg Fryer building stuff and Mark
Mm.
Reynolds and all of the new Guyton guitar coming out is all that's still up there.
Yeah, new for 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
brilliant.
it's great. It's nice to go down memory lane actually at times and go and check it out and be like, wow, I used to come to this website every day to see if something new had been posted and pore over images of, like, there's 3 photos of this one guitar and you just spend hours staring at it trying to
Yeah,
figure out how close it was, and It's
Yeah.
we don't do that so much these days because we're all really busy. But it's nice to go back into that world. And I posted a picture today actually on the podcast Instagram, which was someone had taken a photo of, or it's a photo from 1982 in LA, and the truss rod cover was missing from the guitar.
Right. Okay.
And it's just like I've never seen this photo before, and I've
Yeah.
been around as long as you and looking at photos and taking on information. And
I will say though that I see photographs and quite well-known photographs. So I never realised that in the Starflix video that some of the tuners were.
Yeah, one of the tuner is broken.
That's right.
The G string tuner is he dropped the guitar. Someone dropped it and they replaced it with a metal tuner.
Right.
He had that up until I think when was that video? 84.
Yeah, I think it was 83 because it was just before the works got released. I think wasn't it? So yeah, it's so somebody pointed that out, and the amount of times I'm not the most perceptive of people like that. So it's like there are some I know the likes of Mike Ride and Mark Reynolds and so many others. They pick out there'll be a post and they'll be talking about a very, very small part of a photograph that I've just never looked at before because I always go to the obvious, which is the action shot, and just what angle the red special's been shown at. It's so I'm not the most perceptive of that kind of thing. It's
because you're busy, mate. Because you your story's different to ours because you end up. First of all, you get your guitar, which means absolute world to you from your family, and your nan's able to see you take hold of it, which is absolutely that's so important and such a lovely story to know that she got to see you have that joy and to share that moment with you. But you go on then to create your own band, and you find the forum online. Talk to us a little bit about wanting to create your own band and using the red special as your tone.
Yeah, so when I was in my teens and through school, we had school bands, we just do covers and all that kind of thing, and that was good. And then went to university. I went to London when you could afford to go to London, right at the kind of cusp, really, at the end of the 90s. And the thought was to get to London to try to get into music and all the rest of it, and just didn't happen. It's you go to university, you do a lot of growing up, and I didn't take my guild to university because I didn't want anybody nicking that thing. And so when I finished university, I took the guitar up there and I tried getting into a few things, but nobody was really into the kind of stuff. Nobody was really into the things I was wanting to play. And I started writing some songs of my own, but they weren't that great. Not saying that they become much better, but at the time, they really, it was quite scrappy and not very good. And I ended up moving back to Wales, and one of my best mates who was a keyboard player, and we kind of got something together. We started writing together, and we were writing quite different. I was writing not so much, it didn't sound like Queen, the stuff I was writing. It was more kind of indie and kind of alternative kind of rock stuff. And I was writing these songs, but my mate was writing more of the kind of the power kind of songs where every song had a guitar solo with a specially written chord sequence underneath, and it's fantastic. It was a really interesting kind of thing to do. I've heard Brian say in the past that he finds that writing interesting guitar solos and pieces for the other band members was easier than writing solos for his own songs, because they'd be taking the music into places where he wouldn't necessarily naturally go as a songwriter. And so he thought outside the box, and you've only got to listen to all the fantastic solos he does for all of Freddie's songs to see what he meant by that. And same kind of thing, in as much as somebody presents you with something and it's a challenge, and it's almost like you try harder because you want to almost like you want to impress, and you want to prove yourself. And
Yeah.
so I really enjoyed that. But we kind of you got more and more kind of writing kind of ballady things, which I really wasn't enjoying that much. And it turned out I was booking all the gigs and I was doing all the legwork, and he wasn't doing any of that. And so I said, right, okay, that's fine. I quit. I'm starting my own band. And we lost the bass player as well. And I nicked the drummer and from the old band and found a new bassist. And we started as a 3-piece. And I used the Guild, an AC30 and treble booster, and also a Telecaster as my sound. And the fantastic thing about the Brian May setup is that I think Jonathan touched on it during his podcast, is that, you put other guitars through this setup and it sounds, there's characteristics, there's the bigness of sound when you've got everything turned right the way up and you strike that big E chord or A chord or whatever on stage. And, you've got the characteristic of an AC30, which is just that big kind of room filling, everyone knows you've arrived kind of sound. But there's, when you turn the guitar down or whatever, you start getting, quite different kind of characteristics. And that's what I really like about the AC30, is that I think it's the most transparent amplifier out there. You can play 5 different guitars and get 5 different sounds. Not everything just gets compressed to this one kind of to this one kind of sound that you do get with, Black Stars are good amps, but I tend to get that from those, and Marshalls as well. The AC30 really does seem to highlight the characteristic of a guitar that you're playing. And in this 3-piece, we had kind of limited success. We played quite a bit we played some good gigs in London. We did a few, we recorded quite a bit. And as what always seems to happen, is that as my songwriting got better and started going into, the first, half dozen songs we did were just rip-offs of like Manic Street Preacher songs, it's, the cliche of being Welsh and liking the Manic Street Preachers, or God forbid, but I really like their music, and the songs we were writing were that kind of 3-4 minute kind of anthemic kind of indie rock kind of sound. And then the next kind of however many songs, dozen or so songs that we wrote and recorded, started gaining our own identity and all the rest of it. But I was using this, the Guild quite regularly, especially for recording, and it just adds. And like I say, it didn't sound like Queen. It just added such a wonderful, big, rich sound to the record. And when gigging, I used to use the Guild, and we, at the end of a gig, used to have people coming up and saying, they liked a certain song, or they didn't like a certain song, or whatever. But more often than not, people would say, you can't sing, but your guitar's wicked, and thanks.
Yeah.
And so, some people knew it was a Red Special, but more often than not, people didn't, and so it was nice not to have the, people coming up kind of saying, oh, you're trying to copy the Brian May sound, because obviously it was, but the intention wasn't to sound like Brian. It's just that it's such a versatile guitar, and it is such so easy to play, and it just looks really bloody cool, in photographs. Yeah. So I've used the Guild as a working tool away from the Brian May stuff, the Queen stuff, as well as just geeking out in the bedroom and trying to just play along to songs and gigs and all the rest of it, through the laptop.
Yeah, definitely. We can relate to that.
But just out of curiosity, when you play, you're playing at home and you're just going to plug in your Red Special and all the rest of it, do you play along to music? Do you play along to backing tracks, or do you just play kind of a cappella kind of thing, just you and the guitar?
Back in the day, especially when I was learning, I would put the track on to get the timing and try and listen to the up and down strokes and pick out the notes that are being being hit, and also trying to listen in really to, especially with the Brian May stuff, the coin, and try and replicate that, the sound that the sixpence makes. So I would play along, and then I would stop, and I'd go back and go, oh, that doesn't sound right. How do I get that to do that? But more often than not now, I just plug it in, and I like the sound it makes because of that feeling it gives you, unlike any other guitar, because everything's on full.
Yeah, and it's absolutely playing along to the records. I think is absolutely the best way to practice, because you're in Queen, or you're in Led Zeppelin, or you're in whatever for the for the song, and you end up you play a wrong note, you got to recover in time with the band. You don't get to kind of make good of your mistakes. And that's how I still play. Much to Kate's frustration, because it does get loud. Like you got, even within the attenuator. If you put on the the hi-fi and try to get that to compete with an AC30, things are getting loud. And it's no kids, no neighbours. That's my that's how I managed to get away with it.
I've got children now, so literally any time past bedtime, I cannot plug my Brian May rig in and play and get that feeling of interaction between guitar and the sound coming out of the speakers without fear of waking them up or struggling. And anyone that has small children will know waking them up at any other time when they're asleep is just an absolute nightmare. So I've just resigned myself to playing weekends and early evening before they go to bed.
I've been told that small children are very, very inconsiderate. So.
They are, especially mine, because they're little versions of me.
Good God, what an image.
So anyway, moving swiftly on, before my wife comes in or listens to the podcast and hits me in about 3 or 4 weeks' time when it goes live. My lovely wife Vicky, who is supporting me throughout this podcast adventure of mine. Thank you very much, Vicky. I couldn't do it without you. But Andrew, you've got to that point where you playing guitar, you know a lot about the Brian May sound. You joined the forum, you're playing gigs, you're using a Guild Red Special. You obviously clearly must break an A string at one point and think either that's a great name for a guitar store, or where do I get these strings and what's Brian May using?
Yeah, well, I read, I think, as what happens, when when a new release is out, well, there's going to be a lot of interviews and stuff. And I think I learned in 98 or 99 or whatever, when Another World came out, that he used these Optima Gold Strings, and you couldn't find them for love and money. 1998, internet is still very early days. You certainly don't put your credit card details on the website in 1998. I just didn't have opportunity to try these things out. And just by pure chance, during my university years, for a couple of years, I was seeing a girl from, she's from the south of France, and we'd go back to visit her family a couple of times a year. And there was a guitar shop in Marseille, and it had Optima Gold Strings, which I'd learned with the old Maximo ones. And so, brilliant. I bought a lot of 8s or 9s, whatever I could get my hands on. And, I'd put on my guitar, and by the time we'd go, the following year, I'd probably need another few sets or whatever. But, the problem is, staying with somebody just to have a good supply of Optima Gold Strings is not a good idea for your future, So it was, so when that relationship kind of terminated, well, I had a real dilemma with regards to where am I going to get my strings? So I worked for my dad for a while. When I was in London, he was involved in plant sales and machinery hire, that kind of thing, so excavators, diggers, all that kind of thing. And I was working for him in London for a while, and then work situations changed, and I moved back home. Also, relationship things changed, so I moved back home. And I found myself at the age of 24, 25 or so with some savings, because my mum always encouraged saving and all the rest of it. And at that point, I had enough to put a deposit on a small terrace house in the valley somewhere and carry on doing the job I was doing. Or, with no dependents, no, only myself to think of, I could do something kind of reckless with it. And, so I was wondering, shall I buy a guitar? The guidance had just come out, and thinking, should I, shouldn't I? It's a good investment, but it's not an investment because I'll never ever sell it, So all these different things. And then what happened? I think, I went on to Optima-musicseiten.de, which, was an entirely German website. And my very limited, I did, some German in school and everything. My limited German, I could kind of figure out, a few little bits and all. I said, so anyway, I sent an email to the email address on there and said, how much for 10 sets to the UK? And they got back to me and said, it'll be this amount of money. I had to wait a couple of days because they had to go via, I had a reply from this guy called Bernie out in Australia. And they come back and said, it'd be this much. And I said, okay. And so I sent back, okay, just out of curiosity, how about 50 sets? Thinking that if I buy 50 sets, I'll keep 10 for myself and I'll sell the rest on eBay or whatever. Because I'd ordered some from Strings Direct and they took ages and ages to send through. And only because Optima is such a nightmare to deal with, Strings Direct are friends of mine, so I'm not slagging them off. But so they come back and they said, okay, if you bought 50 sets, it would be this much cheaper. I said, okay. And then the cogs really started turning. I said, right, how much for 500 sets? And, they said, okay, we've had a few meals going back and forth now. This is the very most money we can give you off. And this is our trade price. This is it's our export price for trade. It won't go any lower than this. So I had a little chat with my dad and a few other people. And he said, well, at the very worst, and they don't sell, you'll have guitar strings for life, but, you'll be able to sell them for what you bought them for. So, to go for it. So anyway, I emptied out a post office savings account, I think, and said, right, I'll buy, I think it was something like 48 sets of Maxiflex 9s and 10s and then some normal 8s, 9s, 10s and some acoustics. And I started selling on eBay. I got in touch with I put a post up on the Brian May World Forum and said, I've decided to start selling some Optima strings. You can't get them anywhere else in the UK or many other places for that matter. If you're interested, let me know. And the name A Strings, my name's Andrew. So, A is obviously an A string in a set of guitar strings. And what was the other thing? Well, my parents are called, me and my brother are Andrew and Alex. My parents are Jill and Glyn. And we come up with the G strings joke before anybody else did, literally every week of my life since I think it was August 2005, somebody's made the G strings joke, and it does run a little bit thin after a while. But anyway, let's calm down a bit, Andrew. Come up with A strings, start up an eBay shop and just start selling them. And I was doing that alongside the job that I was doing at the time. And I had a friend who lived out in Stuttgart, and I thought, right, well, if I want to do this properly, the only way I can really do it properly is by trying to secure the exclusivity for selling them in the UK. And so I did that. I sent them an email saying to Optima, listen, can we have a meeting? And they said, what do you mean, can we have a meeting? We're here in Munich and you're in Cardiff, South Wales. When do you expect to meet? I said, well, I'll come over and see you. And I didn't hear anything back for a little while. Out of nowhere, as a chancer, I emailed the brianmay.com website and said, listen, I've started importing these strings. I know that Brian uses them, and I imagine he's got plenty and he doesn't need my help. But if you're ever stuck for whatever reason, please get in touch because, I'd be only too happy to help you out. And I say there's some emails going back and forth between Optima and myself, and we're trying to arrange this meeting. And I was driving an 18.5 ton beavertail lorry up towards Brecon, mid Wales, and I was on the A470, and this is. Mobile phone laws had come in, but they weren't that strict, And so anyway, I was, driving this lorry up to mid Wales, and phone goes and didn't recognize the number. And I said, hello, like that. I'm having to speak loud because, you're in a loud lorry. And this guy goes, is that Andrew? I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, it's Pete Malindrum from Brian May's office. And I swerved, I was like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Bleep that out, sorry. But I said, do you mind if I'm driving, I'm just going to pull over. I'll give you a call straight back. And he said, yeah, no worries. So I kind of pull over into this kind of lay-by, and some deep breaths, heart's kind of going a little bit. All right, this is Brian May's office. Calm down. And I called this number back, and tried acting as cool as I could. Yeah, it's Andrew here from A Strings, and he goes, yeah, how are you doing? And I said, yeah, fine, thanks. How can I help you? He goes, yeah, so got your email, and at the moment it's a nightmare trying to get hold of Optima Strings because we placed an order with somebody in Australia. He's got to wait until the Germans wake up, and basically it's about a 3-4 week turnaround between us ordering strings and getting them. And it's not good enough because if Brian needs a set of strings to go on stage with whoever next weekend, we need them straight away. So his words were, and Pete does come across as quite intimidating at first, and his words were, we'll happily get the strings off you, but if we need the strings delivered to us at 3 o'clock in the morning via stretch limousine under a silver cloche, that's what we need. And I said, basically I said the equivalent of yes sir. It was, yeah, whatever, I'll always make sure I got a reserve here and whatever you need, blah blah blah. And he said, yeah, cool, all right, so if we need anything, we'll be in touch. I said, okay, thanks. And then basically I called my dad. Guess who I just spoke to? And I called my mum. Guess who I just spoke to? And it was just the most surreal thing. And then over time, I went out to Germany and had a meeting with Helmut Haslinger, who was the owner of Optima Strings at the time. And, I was expecting to walk into an office and a boardroom kind of thing. And I walked into his front room and he had lederhosen on and one of those kind of Bavarian caps and a feather kind of thing. And he really wasn't interested in making strings whatsoever. He was a very, very talented zither manufacturer. And, he bought Maxima. His mate owned the Maxima string company and he passed away. And I think that the fishing line side of the business went to one person and he bought the guitar string line. And basically they said, looking back now, it's pretty brazen because, why should they give it to, somebody with obviously no experience like me? Why should they give it exclusivity to these strings to me? And they said, why should we? And I said, well, nobody else is doing it. And, I'm guaranteeing to spend this amount with you within 6 months. And if you don't want that, well, your options are nothing. And so they kind of said, yeah, okay, we'll give you the exclusivity for 6 months, then we'll revisit it. And 6 months later, I went back out to see them and they said, yeah, it's yours. And so it was from there. And, throughout that time as well, it was by pure coincidence that they brought out a Brian May signature set of Optimas in early 2006. So literally as A Strings kind of started trading, got a website together, so it was selling through the forum on eBay and all the rest of it. Optima brought out a Brian May set and Pete would help me out by, I'd send, a dozen sets of strings up to him and Brian would sign them all for me to be able to give away as competitions just to try and grow the customer base and all the rest of it. And he really, really didn't need to help me out at all. He owed me nothing, but it's just a testament to how nice these people are. Pete is one of life's absolute diamonds. I know that he can sometimes come across, a certain way on, on forums and that kind of thing. if you have 5 minutes face to face with this guy, you can't not love him. And this isn't sycophancy. This isn't uh, me trying to suck up, because I'm just talking from uh, my belly, I guess. He's just one of these people who will bend over backwards for you if if you treat him with the respect that him and Brian deserves. And they've helped me out no end. So from just supplying strings, started doing like the Fox phases and
Yep, I remember when you imported them.
yeah. So basically off the back of doing the Optima strings and being able to say officially that Brian May comes to A strings for his strings, which is an amazing thing. Started having people saying, can you get hold of this? Can you get hold of that? And so I started doing Peterson tuners, started doing these short-lived kind of Fox reissued phases, which I think just looking at, they were only out for a little while, but I think that they're the most expensive carcass of a pedal that anyone's likely to buy, because they sounded crap, really, really bad. The reissues, they sucked all. You needed 2 treble boosters to go through these things. Yeah. They sounded really bad. But Lee Spate, he does fantastic things with these things. He'll rip the innards out and put amazing things. He puts this amazing circuit in there and makes them sound like they're meant to. And my Fox phaser, which is just down there, is one of his. And so anyway, I babble, and I'm really sorry. I do kind of
go
off.
It's all right. It's interesting. It's good.
But he so we. I was basically starting to become a bit of a Brian May one-stop shop thing, and one of the visits to Allerton Hill, it was very surreal, actually, because my Kate, who's my wife, she's from Bracknell, and where the house that Pete kind of works out of, which is kind of Duck Productions, and the Brian May kind of side of Queen, is only about 5-10 miles away from where she lives. And so if I was visiting the future in-laws as they were at the time, I'd mention to Pete I'm in the area, and he'd say come along for a cuppa, and that's where the friendship kind of evolved and everything. And this one day was there, I think I was dropping something off, and so I wasn't going to stay very long. And almost like that, that Terminator reference where Homer Simpson kind of appears from the bushes, when he's like best friends with Flanders. Greg Fryer kind of did that, kind of coming out of the bushes. And Pete introduced me to him, and we got talking and stuff. And I met Greg the day after, and he showed me one of the Fryer copies. And from there, I think Pete encouraged us to kind of talk a bit more, and I started selling Fryer boosters through the website as well. Greg was involved in developing the DE amp in its earlier stage. I think Dave Peterson started it, then Greg took over, and
that's right.
And then Greg and me haven't spoken for probably about 10 or 12 years now, and we were quite close for quite a while. Things happen, and you take a deep breath and think, okay, that's kind of run its course, and that's fine. But for the 2 or 3 years or so where between around about 2006 and 2009, well, we spoke quite a bit, and I was representing his products over here. Greg sent me through a prototype of the DE, which I took along to like one of the guitar shows that we used to exhibit at. And I had to go to, I can't really talk about this, but I went to for a meeting with.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not going to talk about the main bit of it, because I really can't. But I went for a meeting with Brian and Pete, and which was surreal in itself. Like to sit around a table with your hero and this wonderful, guy that is Pete, who's, Pete kind of gives you a little bit of, don't worry about it, he's just another bloke kind of thing. And, I'd met Brian a few times by that point, but, still to be in natural conversation with somebody who's, you probably still got a poster up somewhere with him on, it's just a little bit weird. But anyway, at the end of this meeting, I was going, I had to go and meet Nigel Knight for the first time, funnily enough. And I just mentioned to Brian, I said, I've got a prototype of, I got Greg Fry's prototype Deaky in the boot. And he said, oh, do you want to get it out? And we'll have a blast. So, yeah, all right. And so I ran to the car, grabbed this kind of Deaky amp. We went into his, the front room of, or one of the rooms of his, wonderful big house. And they had the original Deaky there, and Pete went and grabbed the Deaky and put like an AB switch there. And the original guitar wasn't there, but I think Brian was playing at the time this, he had a picture of his face on it. I think it had like the moon and stars on it. It was
the BMG that had been painted, is that?
Yeah, something like that.
Or a Burns.
It was a Burns, I think, yeah. And so he's playing that, and as you alluded to before, any guitar in Brian's hands sounds like Brian, but especially through the Deaky as well. And anyway, Brian was kind of doing all these kind of he's just playing through it, and just I'm there watching Brian May in this kind of dark room, kind of just playing through the Deaky, and he was kind of going between. He had an AB switch, and he was going between the real Deaky and the other Deaky, and the prototype. And to be fair to Greg, he was making an amplifier going off sound files from literally the other side of the world. So when he came over to when he had meetings with, he used to come over to do maintenance on the guitar and to develop things and whatever. He'd be over for a few weeks. He'd do tests. He'd run meters through things, and he'd do all, the kind of, the tests that he would need to do, and then he'd go back to his workshop in Sydney, and he'd be working off sound files, which isn't ideal. And so, so he got a lot of characteristics about the Deaky right, but it was just missing that kind of hunk, that kind of, that mid-range kind of, almost kind of half-cop wah kind of sound that the Deaky had. And it's not good to have regrets, but I think if you have got regrets, it's good to recognize what they are so you learn for the future. And my biggest regret to this day is that Brian, he's kind of going between the two, and he's looking at Pete more, but he's looking at me and saying, it's not quite right, is it? And it's missing this, that, and the other. And we were kind of agreeing, and we were just talking about different aspects of it. And he looked at me, and he got the guitar off. He said, "You have a go." And I just looked at him, and I said, "Nah." No, it's not going to happen. And he said, okay. And he just put it back around his neck, and he was just playing, whatever. And I just thought, I was just enjoying him play too much. And, just the situation I was in to watch, this bit of real life R&D happened in front of my kind of eyes, and, Brian being, as meticulous as he is, he said, I'm going to, I'm going to actually tell Greg what's going wrong with this. So he got out this dictaphone that he must have been carrying around with him, and he started talking into this dictaphone to Greg and playing between A and B. And he said, "Now listen to this," and he'd record something, and then he said, "Now listen to this in comparison," and kind of going between the two. And I'd always spoken to Greg, with almost kind of. Always like I was walking on eggshells, because I realized that I'm the one with no talent in this kind of scenario, and I still am. Nigel Knight is electronics genius, and Greg Fryer is done wonders with what he did. Guyton is very he's essential because he's a guitar builder. Me, I just sell stuff, and I say that I also sell it to Brian May, and I, cross my fingers that the person's going to want to buy it. There's absolutely nothing that I kind of bring to the party. And so, I've always, Pete I can relax with, and, I can really have a laugh with. Greg, I was a little bit more kind of guarded. And so when I heard Brian kind of quite, he's quite brutal in places, saying why, the new one just doesn't sound anything like the original. And, I think we got to go back to the drawing board and all this kind of thing. I just kind of, wow, only Brian can talk to Greg Fryer like that. And it was, so my biggest regret in life is not picking up the guitar and playing through the DE amp with my hero in, a couple of feet away from me. But,
what would you have played?
One of my songs, probably. Yeah. What do you think of this tasty riff, Brian? No, it's you wouldn't insult the guy by playing by playing good old fashioned Lover Boy or Baby Napsy or anything like that with you. It's it's I would have just probably a pentatonic or something.
Yeah.
Something original like that.
Yeah, nice. No, what a great story, Andy. I mean, you've gone from it's hard to sum up, but an ultimate fan to then getting the guitar, to then getting the setup, to then deciding that you want to sort yourself out with strings, and bit of a light bulb moment to think you can actually maybe do something. Working with your hero.
Yeah, absolutely, and and around about 2012, which coincidentally the year I got married, I've been doing A strings for about 6 years at that point, and it was, I managed to get a good reputation in as much as I was reliable. You always have any past customers that I've let down, and me say that I'm reliable. They might differ, but
Well, I was going to talk to you about that outside of the podcast, actually.
where the F of my strings. So yeah, but apart from that, I managed to kind of make contacts with all the right people, and add foundations for something that was more than what A Strings was currently doing. I was 6 years on. I was still working on my own. I had a little office down in Cardiff Bay with a lockup, and
I remember it well.
Yeah, of course, because you came down just before the Paul Rogers gig, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I bought as the second tour, and I helped you pack some orders, which is probably where the unreliable reviews come from. Is that one day that John Underhill helped out A Strings? Yeah. You then help from someone.
Yeah, that's right. It was the Paul Rogers gig in Cardiff, the CIA as it was at the time. Yeah. And the bassist fell ill, didn't he? And Neil Murray played.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was enjoyed that. That was a really good one. But just so from 2006 onwards, any tour that Brian was involved in, so whether it was Queen, Kerry Ellis, or We'll Rock You, all that kind of thing, they used to say thank you to Andrew from A Strings, which for me, again, what a thrill to have, your favorite, your hero, acknowledge you in print in the back of a program. And we used to get I used to get orders from if they were playing if they were playing Hamburg, I used to the day after I'd get an order for a booster or some strings or whatever from Hamburg. If they were playing Brussels, I'd get something a couple of days after from it was, you could tell where they were playing from, where the orders were kind of coming from, and they really helped me in ways that I kind of didn't deserve, and I still don't, that they there's nothing that I'm doing that thousands of other shops couldn't do and wouldn't do if and would do if they were given a fraction of a chance. Like I really, I've landed on my feet.
I think you're underselling yourself there, though, mate. Definitely underselling yourself. I think because if you look back, even just in this conversation, and I know, and I've known you for such a long time now, and we've talked about loads of different things over the years. And out of the three of us that started, going back to the beginning, you're the only one of us that is stuck at what they've done and carried on with it. You also undersell the value of you, but also you help them solve a problem, and you have such an intrinsic understanding of not just well, you said it yourself, all of the people that surround Queen want Queen to do well. And because you're such a fan of Brian May and the Red Special and the story, and you make sure that when you're making your own decisions for them based on supplying strings, equipment, and coverage, and what you tell people and how you behave and act around them, is just testament to one of those people that is a fan that wants them to succeed. So you're doing the right things for them, which is exactly the reason they come to you, and exactly the reason they tell people to come and buy their stuff from you.
That's very, very yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Did
I say that right from what you wrote down?
I was going to say, I think you missed the good-looking part as well. I think.
Yeah, well, we can't. That doesn't come across in a podcast, though. No, I mean, I've watched you from the sidelines. I mean, I was gonna say, I think I was one of your first customers from BrianMayWorld.com.
Yeah.
And bought like 5 sets of strings from you at that point, and
5%
I have, yeah.
Yeah. No.
And over the years, we've caught up, and we've hung out, and we've done stuff. Less so more recently, but it's been great to get chatting to you again in the last 12 months. And it's been lovely for me to come back and look back at what you've done. But having looked at A Strings from the outside and watch you go from selling strings to selling strings and Fox phasers to selling strings, Fox phasers and retrosonic choruses, to pieces and tuners, to then selling boosters and all the other bits and pieces. You sold the original super guitars. You could get them through you when they came out. All of the different things you've done so well, and you've been mindful of us as fans and what Brian May is and Brian as a person and his brand, and you kind of manage that expectation and balance so well that anyone looking from the outside just sees you. And when you're saying that it's either something Brian used, you're not hiding behind stuff. It is what Brian's used, so we get that information. But also, you're not out there airing his dirty laundry and telling everyone about some of the stuff that maybe isn't, that that wouldn't be best for us to know. And you've carried that on and grown A Strings to such a place that you can see why you've done so well.
Oh, that's, bless you, thank you. That's really, really yeah, that's really nice of you to say. It's like I say, to be involved in in any part of the of the Queen kind of organization is a thrill. And through the ups and downs that the business inevitably has, it's been going for 15 years now, and it's, as with any business, it's a roller coaster. You get your fallow periods, but then you get your good periods, and it all balances out somehow. And the one thing that has remained a constant throughout the entire thing is, even when you're having your worst days, you take a step back, you take a deep breath and think, look at what you do and look at who you deal with, and, I'm not just saying, with regards to who you deal with, I'm not saying, about the famous names or anything like that, just, the characters that you're dealing with. And, the interesting thing with you, again, relating to referencing something you've mentioned in previous podcasts, is that, there aren't that many, you mentioned the Van Halen kind of side of things, where, there's like a fanatical kind of pilgrimage to try and find his tone. And yeah, exactly. And all that. And, and there are actually, there are guitarists out there that, players out there like you and me that, Hank Marvin is a massive, so many people want to play like Hank Marvin and sound like Hank Marvin. And it seems like his sound is just as difficult to nail as Brian's. And it all comes down to, as much what the right hand's doing as what the left hand's doing. It's in the fingertips, but you get, people with, these passions, and, there shouldn't be, once you start talking about accounts and, all the the bull that kind of goes with running a business, that can drag you down. But when you look at the actually what you're doing, so lucky and so privileged to work in an environment and with people who are just passionate about what they're talking about. Nobody comes into my shop under duress. They haven't got to come in and buy something in the same way that you've got to go to Tesco's and get bread, milk. You haven't got to go to the, or, medication from the pharmacy or fuel from the petrol station. Nobody comes into the shop needing stuff like that. If you're a gigging musician, you're coming in for your strings and your cables, and you're a gigging musician because you love being a musician. I'm very, very lucky to be working in a positive environment. There's nothing really kind of negative associated with it, and it's important to recognize that sometimes, because, like I say, the other stuff can, weigh you down quite easily, and you can lose perspective. But it's very, very lucky, and I say it's important to remind yourself. It's important for me to remind myself of that quite often.
Definitely. But you make your own. I'm a strong believer in you make your own luck through hard work and opportunity, and seeing when an opportunity is there and taking it,
and being nice. That. And being nice to people, and is the important thing, because if people feel like they're being respected and they enjoy dealing with you, you're going to see them again. And I think that is something that's becomes contagious, because if you've just had a good experience with somebody, the next person you meet is going to have that. They're going to have good attitude, John, as opposed to the stinkers that you sometimes
Yeah, I'm sorry. I must stop coming to the shop.
Yeah, no, it's all good though. But it's So anyway, from 2013 or so, I had the shop, which has been a full kind of retail premises as opposed to just online. And unfortunately, I guess from around about that time, I've kind of had less. I've been less focused on the Brian May world, and I'm not talking about the website, the kind of Brian May kind of focus on products, because that is, it is, even though there's quite a few of us on the forum, it's a very niche kind of thing in the valleys of South Wales, or in Nottingham, or in
definitely
Devon, or whatever. It's quite niche. So unfortunately, you need to kind of let's use a pun, let's spread your wings. And you need to get away. Exactly. And so, we've been doing stuff like, Fender and Gretsch and Rickenbacker and Jackson and all these kinds of other brands, which are your day-to-day kind of bread and butter products, which unfortunately, for me, I had a perfect name for a Brian May shop as well. If we were just opening up a Brian May shop, which just had 80-30s and D keys and all the rest of it, I was going to call it the Bri Pod. And
nice.
I know. But unfortunately, you can't open up a shop like that, because online you can, but when you're trying to deal with more general inquiries, you need to be less niche, I guess. So as a result, I've not had a great deal of interaction with the forum members. The Red Special forum is Mike Ryde and myself started that back in, I think it was 2011, 2012 or so. So it's still, I renew it every year with regards to the, the whole rest of it. So still got that kind of involvement, but I'm not involved in the forum as much as I'd like to be, because, I'd like to have the other thing about it is that it does become a little bit of a busman's holiday to talk about guitars outside of work, so it's, but yeah. No, it's.
You say that, but you have come along to a couple of meetups and hung out with us all, and come to the meal afterwards, and you seem to enjoy yourself, and it's always nice to see
you. So I'm just trying to think. So the first one went to, I'm sure it was 2007. That was with when Pete gave us the Pete Cornish board and the the router.
Yep.
And then, or it might have been 2008, because 2009 he lent me the John Birch, the Guyton Scalloped,
Yep.
and some pedals as well. Maybe that was 2010, the pedals as well, because we had we borrowed the tribute concert booster from Pete Cornish.
Right.
Yeah, which is this kind of big massive kind of booster, which didn't sound very good at all, actually. Yes, that was that one. And then the real coup was so again, I mentioned that my missus is from Bracknell. Having gone to visit Bracknell on many occasions, there's a venue there called South Hill Park that Nigel's well aware of it, because Nigel is from Bracknell as well, and I talked to Mike Wright about organising like a. I think that he approached me actually about organising the next meetup and doing it somewhere further south, and I basically reading between the lines, I think that he kind of mentioned it, hoping that maybe I'd try and entice Pete along and all the rest of it, and I mentioned it to Pete. So we got in touch with South Hill Park and paid deposit for the rooms and all the rest of it, and started organising things together. Nigel organised drum kit, and we got like a jam session sort of for the end of the day. Made sure Guyton was down, and I think Barry Morehouse from House Music came along with a lot of guitars and all that kind of thing. And I had a chat with Pete about a couple of months before, and said, listen, this is going on a Saturday. Do you reckon you can come along? And he said, well, if I did come along, I'd bring along the Red Special. And I said, oh, that'd be brilliant. He goes, but it is a Saturday. He said, I work Monday to Friday. My son plays football on a Saturday. I don't particularly want to spend it kind of cooped up. And I said, well, see how you get on close to the time kind of thing. And, I was having kind of almost daily conversations with Mike in the kind of couple of weeks running up to it. And I think Pete kind of confirmed it a couple of weeks before. And I, just in case something had come up, because maybe, Brian is a worldwide superstar, he might have needed to do a recording session for somebody or whatever. I just thought, as opposed to announcing it and to attract maybe people who wouldn't have come otherwise, kind of keep it quiet. And anyway, I was on a walking stick. That's right. I busted my leg the week before. I was best man, and I had my guild around my neck actually. And we played like an 8-song set in the evening, and I got absolutely tankered during the day because the bride of this relationship really didn't like me, and I knew that, and she was Spanish as well. And my best man speech kind of tanked because every line was being translated in Spanish by this guy. And anyway, so I got rat-assed from around about 3 o'clock onwards, and to the point whereby in the evening the band didn't think I'd be able to get up and play. But we did like a 8 and 9 song set, and at some point during the night I stood on this cable, and the cable slipped from under my toe or under my foot, and I went slammed down on my knee and onto the cable. And I went down and I carried on playing. I think we were playing Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting or something like that. But I went down with an almighty kind of crash and just kind of yelled out, wow, kind of looked up in the air and kind of shouted. And the rest of the band thought I was just getting down on my knees to play a guitar solo, and they just looked at me and said, oh, what a knob, And I had to kind of get back up to the microphone for the last verse and everything. And the day after, my leg was like, my right knee was double the size of what it should have been, and it turned out that I torn my ligament and fractured my knee and all the rest of it. So anyway, I was like the old man from Scooby-Doo, and for the meetup, and anyway, Pete confirmed, I said he said a couple of weeks before, yeah, I'll definitely come along. But I spoke to him the day before. I said, you definitely come along, and he said yes. So I got in touch with Mike. I said, right, he's coming along, and he said that for a donation to charity, I think it's badges or something. I think for a donation to charity, he'll allow people to play the Red Special for, I think it was £10 a minute, maximum of 3 minutes, and he turned up. Everyone just kind of went quiet, and they saw a gig bag on his back, and he did a question and answer session with Mike, and then he said, if you want to have a go with the guitar, it's for charity, it's a tenner. And then all these people lined up, and they had the opportunity to play that guitar. So having a day like that where you can facilitate something like that was a proud day for me. It was
Definitely.
really lovely to see the joy on people's faces. I'd been lucky to, I've never plugged in and played the Red Special, but I've had a go at it a couple of times, and just each time you'd never think it's going to happen again, and so I don't think I'll ever have the privilege of playing it again. But these people who aren't exposed to this guitar in ways that the likes of Nigel Knight and Guyton and certainly Pete are, having the once in a lifetime opportunity to try this thing out. It was brilliant, really good,
special day. I remember reading about it, thinking, I wish I'd gone to that meetup.
Yeah, well, it's, who knows, it might happen again at some point, because so just going through the meetups. So that was that one. Then that was actually the day Amy Winehouse died, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, the year after was Huggles Coat again, and Mark Reynolds, and a few pictures of me looking really fat in that
No comment.
The vanity comes through, but that was I really enjoyed that one, because I had a really good jam afterwards with Matt and his brother. Actually, Matt and his two brothers, I think, and also Nigel played, and that was a really good one as well. And then I think that was my last one. I did a couple of conventions as a trader, but the first one then that I went to was 2018, which you organised. I think you did one the year before, did you?
Yeah, we did the first one in 2017, which is purely just to get people back together again, selfishly to try and spend some time with my mates talking about the Red Special again, and no delusions of anything. Sean Lever actually goaded me into doing it, because I said, wouldn't it be good if we did it? And he said, I'll give you loads of help, and
yeah, right, Sean.
Did what Sean Lever does so well, and no, he was a great help in pushing me along, and we just found any venue that was near a motorway, that was near a hotel, that Reading seemed like a sensible location. I remember having an argument with Doug Short over Facebook, not an argument, but saying that Doug was saying it's a long way to go from Scotland. I was like, it's 3.5 hours away from where I live, Doug. I could have arranged it on my doorstep.
Yeah, and I know that you're always going to get into, you're never going to please everybody when it comes to location, but like it or not, especially when it comes to the guys traveling from abroad, being that close to Heathrow is a good thing.
It makes a massive difference.
Yeah,
definitely. And sort of in my mind, that was sensible, and having it near the motorway, and I didn't want it too big. And the one I found happened to have a bar that opened, and we could open that partway through the day, and it sort of ticked all the boxes of. I didn't think I'd get more than about 10 people turn up, to be fair. So we arranged that in 2017, and everyone was so pleased, and I was buzzing afterwards. I was like, I'm going to book this again for the next year, and I'd made a conscious decision not to invite people, to ask them to bring things, but to let people know it was going on, and people could make a decision if they wanted to come.
And be a nice surprise if something does happen, as opposed to getting expectations up and put pressure on people.
and it makes it more about the people rather than the equipment and gear. And much
Yeah,
to my surprise, I think I'd mentioned to you, oh, this is going on. In 2018, you walked through the door, followed by Mr. Malandrone
yeah,
and
yeah,
Mr. Knight and
yeah.
Pete's.
And Peter McNick and his
Yeah,
son as well, Frankie. Yeah, and it
yeah,
was yeah, and it was a lot of fun that. And it was nice seeing people like you just mentioned Sean. There's there are characters out there that as we've spoken about earlier. You know, genuine friends. Not just people that you will just talk about red specials to. But like
yeah,
Colin Bowell,
yeah.
Sean and Mike Wright. Me and Mike used to talk loads. Really haven't done for ages, and unfortunately, that's the way that life goes, isn't it? Like
Does
it's
definitely.
yeah. But
But
the nice thing is when you're in that room and the gear, I guess, is the common interest, but it's almost a starting point, isn't it? Because by the time you get to 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, it's some parts of the table might still be talking about signal chains, but the other half are talking about all sorts of weird things that come
well,
on,
we're
and
putting the
again
world
aren't
to rights,
really.
aren't we?
Yeah. There's
Or we're climbing over the bar to get a corkscrew and getting found out by the lady in the hotel.
she listened to reason after a little while, but that was
She was giving you evils for a good hour though.
yeah. No, that was that was the first year, wasn't it? That we
Yeah, that was.
yeah.
That was a good evening though, and that's the whole. I love the day and the meetup and everyone getting together and the gear and the organisation and stuff going on and doing little demos. And for me, the most fun part is the meal afterwards when they're all said and done. The gear's packed away,
Yeah.
everyone's relaxed, everyone's spoken to everyone sort of feels comfortable in everyone's company, and the real conversation starts, and that's where the friendships are formed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, this is the best bit for me. But yeah, you rocked up. You came through the door. We hadn't really asked you properly, so
I turned up anyway.
can you make sure you're invited next time?
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, sir. But it's unfortunately with me, Saturdays are a very busy day with work, and unfortunately, I'm unable to commit until last minute when I know that everyone's categorically going to be work and I can have the day off as well. So I'll especially after the year that we've had. I think everyone is willing to kind of literally go to any length to socialize, and actually,
Yeah,
I think that there's been a lot of reflection with regards to what's important, who's important, and
yep,
like just kind of blowing off one year and saying, "Oh, I can't make it this year. I'm tired. I've done this, that, and the other, and I can't be bothered to travel X amount of miles." Where I don't think that. I'm not talking specifically about a meetup, but I just in general, I think that people are going to make a lot more effort to live a bit and to do the
definitely.
things that they want to do, because if nothing else, this last year showed how precious and fragile everything is, and if you don't take your chances, you're going to miss out.
Definitely. And I've actually I'll announce it live on the podcast. I've actually booked the Red Special meetup for this year, which will be the 9th of October at Thiel in Reading, same place.
Amazing.
Same sort of setup, and that's all sorted out, ready to go. You can find it on Facebook. If you go to the Red Special forum, there's an event. I think I posted up from the Red Special Guitar podcast this year. But
Right, brilliant.
it's there, and as long as we're allowed to do it, it'll be going ahead this year. If not, just to get everyone back in the room together to congratulate us all for surviving and
Yeah, well,
make sure everyone's okay.
absolutely, and with like I say, after being an old forumite, and maybe I'm a little bit of time away and coming back now, and coming into like that evening in the hotel in Thiel, where everyone's around that big table. There's a lot of familiar faces, there's a lot of new ones, but you're aware of their their nicknames or handles on
Yeah.
so people like Doug and Jonathan, both absolute gentlemen, and Uli as well, and his
Yep.
father, just really complete gents, but they completely fit the mold of a red special anorak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they in the same way that we are. They've got the, it's almost like, we're talking about these parallels with regards to, we've all got these stories, and generally they involve a family member, and generally they, it's an example of how much this, guitar and the backstory and what it produces means to us. It's almost like it produces a certain type of person, doesn't it? And there's all sorts of names being thrown at each other, across the table, and there's not one little bit of offense taken by anybody. It's all just it's a big kind of hairy loving, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think my biggest regrets of the meetup is that one year you did come and we managed to do a. I mentioned to you, do you think Pete would do a Q&A? And you said, go and ask him. And I was like, oh, here we go. So I plucked up the courage to go and ask him. And Nigel said, I'll do it with you. And they sat down and did it. And I cannot explain to you what Andrew said about Pete. If you chat to him for a couple of minutes, you just realise that he is a really genuinely nice chap, and he had time for everyone in that room, and he went round on his own accord to every single person to ask them about the guitar they'd bought, the gear they had. He programmed Luke Timmins' rig for him with Brian's presets, and he agreed to do this Q&A. And the real downer for me was seeing, after that he joined the forum again, and he joined the Facebook forum, and just within minutes it was on self-destruct already, and people were sort of taking issue with him. And you just think, after this fantastic experience we'd all shared in that room and as a group of people, if you weren't there to then get his humour and see it on the forum posted in written form, and then people take offence to it, it's just such like a destruction of what we'd managed to achieve in the space of a few hours on a Saturday in Reading.
The word to describe him, again, anybody who listens to this, it really does sound like brown nosing sycophancy and all the rest of it. But he's an extremely, and as is Brian, they're extremely generous people, with their time. And I think Pete's perception as a bit of a bulldog, I think, is an asset, because when Brian May turns up to I don't know, one of the talent shows that he might be coming out and doing a guest appearance with, Brian's sound is Brian's sound, and Pete needs to have the strength of character to say, no, I need my AC30, 3 AC30s turned up right the way up, and no, I can't go any quieter. And you need to have somebody, me in that job, I'd be, oh right, okay, I'll go and ask him, but I don't think he'll be very happy about that. And you need somebody like Pete who will say, no, this is the deal, this is the way, or not at all. But also, with I'm sure Mark Knopfler and Clapton's texts and all the rest of it don't get the same kind of first off, I don't think they provide the same kind of access to the fans that Pete does. But secondly, they haven't got the heritage, and they haven't got the first off, they haven't got the rarest guitar or instrument in the world that's ever been to protect. But he's got a unique job, which requires a certain amount of kind of bravado and like I say, and kind of like a bulldog approach. And when you got people out there copying designs of things that Brian made with his dad, when you've got people who are trying to profit off you left, right, and center, he's developed a very real kind of sense of loyalty towards Brian. And he hasn't got to get involved in this stuff, but the way I see it is that if you want to hear what you want to hear from Pete, in as much as if you want access to information of his rig, or if you want to be able to ask him questions, whatever, you got to allow him the opportunity of telling you what he thinks about certain things as well. It's not just one-way traffic.
Definitely. What comes across to me is Pete and Brian are family, and
Mm.
Pete's protecting Brian from all of us profiteering, and not I probably said the wrong thing there, but I'll edit that out. But Pete's like Brian's family, and he's there protecting Brian from us, and sort of not shielding him, but making sure that Brian's happy and that the right decisions are made and the right information comes across. And
Absolutely.
it's
And
not just
when
looking after the guitar, is it?
no, it's not. And when apart from the the day-to-day stuff that that they do studio wise, whether it's estate management or whatever it is, equipment wise or whatever, they've got obviously a comfortable relationship with each other. But then moving on from that, when Brian steps down from the podium on Buckingham Palace roof, your emotions are going to be all over the place. And when the first person you see is Pete Mallington's face, like it or not, they're sharing heightened emotions with each other. And so there's going to be this connection that they just don't have with anybody else. And, the fact that Pete's been there for, in 94, I think he said that he's been there. So that's a third of Brian's life or so, just under, or just over rather. So, there's obviously going to be, Pete's there to protect the guitar, the man, and, and everything else that goes with it. And, humor does get lost in pixelated form, doesn't it? So, I'm as you said, there was, I don't know how many people, was it 20, 25 people there in that room that day. And not one person came away from it thinking that the guy was an arsehole. But within a few minutes of being online, it's it's sad because, like I say, he's the sweetest and most generous person that you could possibly wish to be associated with, and
much like everyone around Brian and the team, and I'm quite lucky. Over the years, I've known you. I haven't ever really got to know Pete, but I've done a little bit of work, or had Nigel do some work for me, and know Andy Guyton and worked with Andy in the last sort of 2 or 3 years on the project. So you get to know them a bit more than you would do if you were just a customer. And there's a similar sort of it's a humour there, and there's a mutual appreciation that it's hard to put into words. But when go on, sorry. You're going to explain more than I do.
No, I was just going to say that the interesting thing, and I think that the common thread that is the weak spot with me certainly, is that you've got with somebody like Pete, with Guyton, with Nigel, and going further out than that, you've got the likes of Adrian Turner, you've got Dave Peterson, you've got all these fantastic people that are just so confident of how well they do their job, and that's where they kind of that's where they really bond, I think, and where the misinterpreted kind of arrogance comes into, I think, because at the end of the day, Nigel and me, we're very, very close, and we speak to each other very regularly, and if one of us are having a particularly bad day, we'll call each other. If I go to visit the in-laws, I'd probably spend more time around Nigel's than theirs. We're really, really good, but man, is he sure of himself? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But he's got every right to be, because he is such, he's an absolute genius, and he knows it, but all these characters are, they're just, the best of what they do. And, and with that, there's a comfort that just kind of establishes, and just a mutual respect. And, that's the key element to it, I think, is that, there's respect for each other, and of course, the common, the common goal to make everything as good as it can be for Brian, and the work that he does.
And it definitely comes across, especially as you look back to the original. I wouldn't say original, but like the Paul Rogers tour, which was really good. But obviously, you're sort of looking at Brian's rig, and it was put together for that, and then it's evolved, and how that has changed over the years to what it is now, and the sound and what equipment he's got to use. And there's obviously, Pete always talks about reliability, but one of the things that Pete mentioned in one of the Q&As is, and since he said it, you notice it a lot more, is the smile on Brian's face when he's playing. Or it might have been Nigel that mentioned it, actually. Probably misquoting Pete there, but Nigel was saying how, you watch Brian play now live, and he's enjoying himself. He's in the latter years of his life, but he's enjoying himself.
But not only that, to me, as so my rig is to my left on here, and it's the Brian May rig. But I like the 70s and 80s kind of, the late 70s, early kind of, actually from 74 onwards through to early 80s. I like the C one, and I like the Fox Phaser sound. And the one thing, as when the Queen Paul Rogers thing was announced, I was absolutely over the moon, because I'd seen Brian a few times, but I'd never seen Queen before. And okay, John wasn't there, and but just the fact that Paul Rogers allowed these two guys, Roger and Brian, to get back and play again was fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But Brian had Jamie, the rhythm guitarist, backing him up, which allowed Brian to solo and all the rest of it. But it didn't, especially with the focus on like the rock and more bluesy element of the Queen back catalogue. It kind of, the essence of Queen wasn't really there for me, as much as I enjoyed it. But I think since the 2012 Cameron Smith shows, and moving on from there, where it's become just one guitarist, and the proper kind of Queen.
It's the whole show as well now, isn't it? It's that
the
Queen experience is probably the best.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the lights, it's the smoke bombs, it's the capes, and the all the rest of it, and just Brian's playing and sound is so much more reminiscent to me of the earlier shows of earlier Queen, and I just they're in such a good place at the moment, and it breaks my heart they weren't able to play this last summer, because they postponed them now till 2022. 2022 might have been the next tour anyway. Do you know what I mean? But unfortunately, that's the next tour, and who knows whether they're going to want to, whether they've got the inclination to go out and do it again. I'd like to think that they have, because, for as difficult as it is, I think, on them physically and mentally, there's, they don't need to do it for the money. It's, when you've got 20,000 people shouting out your name and hanging on to every note that you're playing, and you've got their attention, that's got to be a drug. Do you know what I mean? How can you just, for John Deacon to be able to say, no, I've done that, I don't know whether that's, I don't know. I don't know whether it's strength of character to be able to kind of say, no, been there, done that, don't need it anymore, or whether they have alluded that he's a bit more fragile, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I think that if you enjoy it, which they obviously do, I think they'll keep doing it until until they can't. I hope.
I really hope they do, because it's what's so lovely about all of the Queen gigs I've been to, and I'm trying to think, the last one was probably in Dublin a couple of years ago, around November. It's the amount of youngsters there. It's the next generation being inspired, and the Bohemian Rhapsody film obviously is clearly inspired. We've got people on the forum now. We've got 16-year-olds again now on the forum asking the questions we were asking 20 odd years ago, and like, oh, I've only got a Burns and or a BMG. How am I ever going to afford a Guyton? And you're like, well,
you know what?
Sonny Jim, when I was your age,
the prospect of a Burns back in 1993, 1994. Wow, can you imagine?
Yeah,
you know, it's yeah.
It's a much different landscape now, but the kind of those questions are up, and I have to stop myself going, well, actually, when I was your age, I was in exactly the same position, and I find myself in a different position now, having worked, and like your good self, well, you have a Guyton, a Red Special.
I have, yeah. Yeah, do you want to see it?
I can do.
That's not podcast friendly, is it? No. So what have you got guitar-wise at the moment?
Well, at the moment, Red Special wise, which is what the podcast is about.
Yeah.
I have a homemade Red Special that I constructed last year, which I had the help of Doug Short, who, long story short, we accidentally bumped into each other on holiday in Cornwall.
That should be the name of his book, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Long story short.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah. I'll pass that one on.
Yeah.
But we bumped into each other in Cornwall, and on a holiday, and his children are a little bit older than mine, but they played, and I sat on the beach talking to Doug, and Doug said, building his own guitar, which seemed to have taken him a very long time.
Yeah.
He'd helped Luke Holwerder in America build his by providing him some plans and some information, and he said, look, I'd be really interested to see if someone else could take those plans and build a guitar. And so long story short, we ended up sitting down and going through email after email of specking out what wood we needed and making our own block board and what size mahogany we'd need. And I trawled the internet and found an old fireplace for the neck, and sent it all up to Doug, and then flew up to Scotland, and the two of us sat in his garage playing with a CNC machine for a few days, and then came home, and then I went to the US meetup, came back and had spent that time with Doug, and Doug sent me down this like care package of Red Special kit, and then I set about building it, which was an experience. And you really, until you try building one, when you see the works of Andy Guyton up close and personal, and you know exactly how frustrating this guitar is to make, you really do appreciate the amount of time, effort, and frustration that goes into constructing one of these. And we're lucky because we have a guitar to copy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brian and Harold back in the 60s were doing this on of their own head. It was it's not like...
And I think that it going by certain guitars at the time. I think there's certainly inspired by certain things, but being the geniuses that they are, they took what they liked the look of and just made it better. It's when. Going through the sales pitch in the shop, people, want to know your opinion, and they say, "What would you buy?" And I say, "You wouldn't be interested in what I want to buy." And they say, "Why not?" I said, "Because," and I genuinely do say this. I say because the best guitar that has ever been built by anybody ever is the Red Special by Brian May. I said, "Oh, I don't like Queen." I said, "Whether you like Queen or not, this guitar has the ability to sound like any guitar that you can see in this room," and there'll be Rickenbackers, there'll be Telecasters, Stratocasters, P90 guitars, humbucker guitars, and all the rest of it. I said, this guitar will sound like anything you want. And, it's on some occasions, it's led to a sale. Most of the time, it's a case of, but I don't want to look like Brian May. And then you move on to another conversation. And, but just developing that a little bit is that I honestly think that he's a recognized genius now. There's no doubt about that. You got all these memes saying you might be cool, but you're not astrophysicist. Stadium rock guitarist cool and all the rest of it. And all that's good, and it's good as a throwaway kind of laugh. But I think that the true kind of appreciation of this man and what he's created, and specifically the guitar that he's created, I think is going to be there's going to be a reawakening, you know, a lot further down the line, whereby the Red Special will become a guitar like the Les Paul. You know, the Les Paul is a signature guitar. It was made
Yeah.
by Les Paul for the Gibson factory. You know, Leo Fender, you know, somebody had to make these guitars, and this Red Special guitar is so synonymous with Brian, and it has been, you know, because there's not been another guitar that has been remotely like it since 1964.
Yeah.
It is synonymous with Brian, and so it's almost like there needs to be a little bit of distance between. So that's what's quite exciting about this Ariel guitar now, is that,
Yeah.
you know, we've got a lot of the features and a lot of the innovations that this guitar has in a different aesthetic, and it's going to hopefully get into people's hands that wouldn't consider a Brian May guitar. And
Yep.
yeah,
that Ariel guitar has got me quite excited, actually, because I fall into the mindset because of my training, I say with inverted commas, over the last 20 years of staring at Red Specials and listening to Queen music. I pick a Red Special up and I intrinsically play Hammer to Fall or One Vision or Tie Mother Down or create, you know, it's just the way that my head works. I pick it up, it's a Red Special, you play Queen songs on it, and I'm quite interested to try the Ariel guitar to see, because I don't think I'm going to pick it up and go, that's Brian's guitar, so I'm going to try and play like Brian. I'm going to pick it up and go, that's different, but it does the same thing, so it's going to maybe help me be a bit more creative or want to learn something else. So I am really genuinely excited about that coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I really do hope that the problem with Brian May guitars, as it stands at the moment, is that 99% of its trade is done through its website. And so you're only going to type in brianmayguitars.co.uk if you've got an interest in Brian May guitars. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
What I think, you know, what needs to happen is that these guitars need to be out in the shops for your Thursday kind of random customer coming in and just having a look around and just kind of looking at something, eyebrows kind of raised, and asking, what is this? What does it do? And you get done off the shelf and you say, right, well, this will sound like, what guitar do you want it to sound like? And then, you know, you set up, right, there you go, I'll leave you alone for 5 minutes, plug it into a Marshall or plug it into a Fender and, you know, go from there. And I think that that's where the future of the guitar and you know, the offshoots need to be. I think that, you know, they need to be in people's hands, because as nice as, you know, the Ariel looks amazing and it'll look really cool on stage and all the rest of it, but people need to try these things out because they're not going to be exposed to it unless they go to brianmayguitars.co.uk, which is nothing against it, absolutely nothing against it. It's just that it needs to be in people's hands, I think.
Well, there'll be at least one at the Red Special meetup this year, so make sure you come along and you get to try one out.
I'll go on an order, not for myself, obviously, for the shop, but yeah, and I think the first batch apparently have gone to Ariel's management, because that was how the contract kind of works. And then the second batch apparently is due in May, and I got myself down for one. Whether I get it, I don't know, but, you know, I hope so. And, you know, it'll be a point of interest in the shop. You know, it'll be something to, you know, do a YouTube video on. It's a little plug.
Yep,
A Strings UK, youtube.com. And, you know, just do something that isn't a Fender or, you know, like a PRS or you know, Gibson, whatever, you know.
I mean, the great thing with it as well, I don't know if you're listening and you're interested in this guitar, is to head over to YouTube and type in two-tone BMG or Ariel BMG. There's videos of Ariel playing the BMG guitar, and there's videos of Brian May playing the guitar. But I think where it really hit home how versatile this was the picture or the video of Eric Johnson playing the guitar through his rig, and he sounds
a million
like
miles
Eric
away
Johnson.
from what, exactly a million miles from, you know, what, you know, the Brian May kind of tone and everything else is, you know, a different type of player and all the rest of it. And it just goes to show how versatile the guitar can be. And maybe once there's a bit of distance and once there are plenty of options that aren't lollipop shaped for people to try and it's been used, maybe at that point, in the same way that you get 59 Les Paul reissues and, all the rest of it, maybe at that point, the Red Special will become a bit more universally accepted,
Definitely. No, it's an exciting time. Hopefully it comes through. You do have another. I know you probably want to go in a minute, but you do also have another guy on order, Andy. For the listeners out there, which one is that, and what era have you gone for?
First of all, for the purposes of my wife, no, I haven't. And for everyone else, I've copied you, mate. Because
you're now dropping me in it.
Yeah, but I've kind of basically I've asked for this the 80s relic, but with the 70s tuners.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Because
choice.
Those tuners look absolutely beautiful, but that the 80s looking Red Special, where it starts getting those bits of like electrical tape kind of holding bits on and all the rest of it, for me, that's amazing. When my first gig, this, Brian May Cardiff Ice Rink, the moments where I wasn't jumping up and down, I had a 35mm kind of snap and shoot, and I was taking photographs of Brian and, Cozy and all the others. And by 1993, the guitar was starting to get really, really kind of beaten up, and it looks so good, so good. In my head, how the guitar looked there was just, I've got images in my head, and unfortunately, I give the photographs and the negatives to Jackie at the Queen fan club, because she wanted to put some of them in the fan club magazine, and I stupidly give the negatives and the photographs, and she lost them. And
lovely.
Yeah, so they're somewhere, and they're probably a lot better in my head than they actually were, in 5x7 format or 6x4 format, whatever it was, because I can't imagine the photographs would have come out that well. But it was. I've just got an image of how that guitar was, and off the Brixton Academy kind of video and all the rest of it. It's that beaten up look for it. It's there's something really, really endearing and beautiful about it, and to me, it. And this is meant as no disrespect whatsoever, but it never kind of sounded the same after the restoration. There's been some things written about, and I've spoken to people about pickups and things adjusted and this, that, and the other. But I think I'm right in saying that probably the last thing that we would have heard the original Red Special as it was probably like the Elton John thing, Show Must Go On and No One But You. And there's just, it always sounded a little bit kind of thicker after that, I think.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one. It's I don't want to go into it too much because I've got another podcast guest coming up who's going to tell me all about the changes. But there are some things that potentially change some things inside it to do with how it's wired, and there's no way am I trying to push blame or say it sounded better before someone did work on it, but through the natural changes and maybe trying to remove some of the unwanted noise it's a little bit like I was talking to someone the other day about the difference between an analog recording and a digital recording, and the way they described it was with an analog recording and how bands used to record is everyone would be in the same room and they'd all be mic'd up, and when you listen to it, like Bohemian Rhapsody, if you listen to the isolated tracks you can hear the unwanted noise of Brian's guitar, and you can hear the drum in the background because the vibrations are making that drum work, and when you push all that together that creates a certain sound. But to do that digitally now, they record everything in isolation, they move things, and you haven't really got that nice gelling and that original tone. I wonder whether it's something like that in the guitar, where actually some of that hiss and unwanted noise that Brian's tried to eradicate over the years
to it.
Added to the tone, and maybe some decisions have been made with the best intentions but have removed it away from what we recognise as that definitive tone.
I've got no doubt that any decision with regards to guitar would have been made with the best intentions and would have been made with at Brian's behest, I imagine. Maybe a suggestion would have been made, or maybe, one of the, not privy to the conversations that happened, but maybe he said, "Listen, I'm getting this awful kind of sound. It's always been a problem. I've been meaning to do something about it for ages. Can you do something about it?" And it's been done. And it's the next step of the evolution of the Red Special. Yeah. And who knows? In 10 years' time, Guyton might be doing a relic of the 2020 Red Special. It's yeah.
If let's hope he does, because that'd be a fantastic thing to own.
Absolutely.
At that time.
There's absolutely no way I'm going to survive a marriage with having a third Guyton. So it's
no. Yeah. Well, I only managed to squeak mine through the door because I helped him build some of the stuff for him.
To be honest, again, me and Guyton, we have a fantastic kind of relationship, mainly on the phone. We'll see each other once every few years, maybe at a gig or whatever. He came down to the shop a couple of years back, and we shop had to go trying to sell some of the transporters, and we had limited success with it. But it's quite a niche thing. But I've been in a fortunate situation where Guyton, as a guitar builder, needs bits, he needs strings, you need boosters to go with the original guitars and this and the other. And I used to say, don't pay me for those, just put it on the tab kind of thing. And it helped pay for Guyton #1.
Definitely. Well, it's good to friends in high places and all that, and helping people out. But that's how the world should be. It's trade. Do something for me, or help it back, rather than always money transactions and whatnot.
Absolutely. But, and everybody benefits. It's that's what it's all about.
Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you tonight. You're the longest podcast recording I've done to date. We're clocking over 2.25 hours now.
Oh my God, you're going to have to nip that down. It's probably about 25 minutes of worthwhile material you can dig out of that. So what am I, guest number 4 or 5?
You're a bit further on than that. Will you be number 6 in recording, but you'll probably be number 4 or 5 out the door.
Right, okay. Scraping the barrel pretty early on then.
No, not at all. But I'm just going to do like a wrap up with how to find out about A-strings, so you can answer like www.astrings.co.uk.
Wicked.
All that stuff, and then I'll have another quick little chat off the mic with you, and then we'll chat and say goodbye. But
Wicked.
Andy, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for all of your time today. The longest podcast, but one of the best, I think.
Thank you very much. Anyway. I do kind of waffle on, so you'll have to listen to this in double time, and it'll only take 2 hours at that point. Then, so it's been an absolute pleasure, and how nice it is to catch up with you. And I think what you're doing with, like I say, trying to get like a record of this kind of thing on, and I just think what you're doing is really good, and it's only going to serve to bring the community closer together. And I've no doubt that the following meetups are going to swell in number.
Let's hope so. And it's all about the people. That's, to me, it's about the same thing you do. Why you do what you do so well, I think is it's about individuals and people and coming together over a common interest. And if everyone goes home happy after the meetup, it's been a successful meetup. And the podcast is here to stem that gap, and hopefully, if it carries on, it'll continue alongside it as well.
Well, if you listen to this podcast from start to finish, you should be able to get 3 listens in between now and the September or October meetup, so it might keep you going. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
And no, not at all. Thank you for agreeing. And if we wanted to purchase the same strings as Brian May, how do we find out where you are? And
yep, so astrings.co.uk is the website, and or you're welcome to call us. We're quite active on Facebook, so A-Strings Guitars on Facebook, and then on Instagram and YouTube. Actually, we're doing we've got quite an active YouTube channel where a couple of the boys do a lot of videos, and that's youtube.com/A-Strings UK, and we're really trying to push that. So if anybody is interested in anything, there's a few Brian May videos on there. I did an MV50 comparison, so there's that up there. So if you're interested in having a look at that. But apart from that, it's everything else that isn't kind of Brian May, really. So if you're interested in anything else, that's youtube.com/A-Strings-UK. So subscribe, please.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if you have any questions on gear in general, or Brian May, what equipment Brian's using,
always happy to talk.
And
yeah.
Andy's always got time for everyone. And when COVID's over, a trip to Andy's store is a nice breakaway from any trip to Wales, just because you get offered a cup of tea and biscuits, no matter who you are or what time you enter.
Well, we've kind of spoken briefly in the past about maybe doing like a mid-year kind of meetup for the hardcore ones that really do want to kind of see each other more than once a year. So maybe at some point we can organise a weekend in sunny Pontypridd, and when it's ideally when there's no floods or anything like that. So you're welcome in at any point, and make sure you mention that you're an anorak, and you'll get treated as such.
An additional 10% on your bill for the pleasure.
Exactly, yeah.
Andy, thanks again, mate. Keep safe, and I'll catch you again soon.
Cheers, John.
And that was Andy Morgan. Andrew Morgan. He prefers Andrew, not Andy. If you ever meet him, call him Andrew. He'd appreciate it. But that was Andrew Morgan. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time with me recording the podcast. I had so much fun, and we laughed a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that we talked about that didn't quite make the podcast that we chatted to for hours as well. It was great, and if you're in the market for some strings, head on over to A-Strings, have a look for your strings, guitars, musical item related bits and pieces, amplifiers, knowledge. If you're ever in Wales and Pontypridd, head on in. You always get a warm welcome, a cup of tea, COVID allowing, and some great knowledge and some thoughts. And he's built up a fantastic legacy in the shop, and he's done an outstanding job. So head on over to A-Strings, everyone. I recommend A-Strings, A-Strings, A-Strings. And I just want to say now thank you to all of the patrons and fans of the podcast that keep listening, keep tuning in each month when I upload a new episode. You are making a difference, and you are making me want to do this even more. I really, really couldn't do it without you all. And it's so humbling to see the numbers go up and up each month, and the number of subscribers go up, and the reviews coming in. It's far beyond what I thought it would be, and I'm hoping that I can make this better and continue to move the podcast forward over the coming months and years. I do have a couple of videos coming out soon, one on the Guyton Time Warp guitar and one on the Ariel BMG, so please do stay tuned for those, and make sure that you follow us on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram to know when those are live. And also head on over to the website www.redspecialguitarpodcast.com to see when the new episode's going live and any additional content. And if you fancy buying a t-shirt or a mug, you can click the link, go and pick up one of those from our shop. Or if you do fancy becoming a patron, you can now do that straight from the website. And again, a massive thank you to Thomas Brancard for all his efforts with the website. Thomas, you absolute legend. We must get you on the podcast soon. Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. This is the longest podcast we've ever recorded. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.